Despite living in diverse environments, different organisms are interconnected because of their similarities in one way or another. One way to elaborate the connections among organisms is through the theory of evolution, which explains the process by which organisms change over time as a result of changes in heritable physical or behavioral characteristics. Changes that allow an organism to better adapt to its environment, enabling it to survive and have more offspring. According to the theory of evolution, species have gradually descended from common ancestors. A scientific explanation for these observations was first developed by Charles Darwin, an English geologist and naturalist. He was known for his contribution to the theory of evolution. Now let us find out how the theory of evolution came to be.
Right after graduating from college, Darwin went on a voyage that lasted from 1831 to 1836. He joined the crew of the HMS Beagle on a journey around the world. It covered several continents and archipelagos. Darwin collected and observed many animal and plant specimens whenever he went ashore. He related his interest in geology and natural history to his observations and specimens. Darwin wrote his observation on each specimen he collected on the voyage. He was curious on how modern animal and plant species were time. When he visited Argentina and Australia, which had similar grassland ecosystems, he wondered why there were a variety of species of organisms found in one kind of habitat. Moreover, he observed similar patterns of reproductions among the organisms. The patterns made him ask many questions. Why were there no rabbits in Australia, even if it was favorable for them to survive in the region? Why were there no kangaroos in England, even if it had the resources the animals needed to survive? During the voyage, Darwin also collected and observed fossils or the preserved remains of extinct organisms. He observed resemblance between some fossils and modern organisms. The figure shows a fossil of a Glyptodon, an extinct animal that lived 10,000 years ago. It is a relative of the modern armadillo that lives presently in South America. Darwin questioned how Glyptodons became extinct and how their distinct characteristics were related to those of the armadillo.
Darwin made his most important observation in the Galapagos Islands in the west coast of South America, where he observed the tortoises. In his account, the tortoises in each island that comprises the archipelago have distinct necks and shell as shown in the figure below.
On his journey back to England, Darwin wondered whether a variety of species found in the Galapagos Islands were related or isolated. Darwin's speculations changed people's common perspective of the natural world. The changes that he had observed made people understand that everything in the natural world is changing. Darwin's book entitled On the Origin of Species was published in 1859, 20 years after his voyage. Its full title is On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. A total of 1,250 copies were printed. Natural variation, also called genetic variation, refers to the random mutations that naturally occur when genes are copied before reproductive cells divide. These mutations cause slight variations in the genome of the parent and the offspring. For example, a parent may lay more eggs or bear more fruits than the offspring, or vice versa. Random mutations are either useful or harmful, but most of the time, they are neutral. In other words, they are neither bad nor good, or they have no effect on the organism. However, natural variation can be passed on from generation to generation. This gives rise to new variation in each generation of a certain population. Artificial selection, which is also called selective breeding, is a process by which humans breed animals and plants for particular characteristics. Usually, organisms that are selectively bred are domesticated. The breeding is normally done by a professional breeder. It allows breeders and farmers to develop and produce a wide variety of animals and plants that are different from their ancestors. Evolution by natural selection is a process by which organisms that are better adapted to the prevailing environmental conditions survive and produce more offspring. The mechanisms of natural selection depends on several phenomena, namely variation, overproduction, selection, and adaptation. Variation. There is variation in characteristics among individuals in a population. The variation is caused by mutation, and it can be inherited generation by generation. Overproduction. If individual organisms of a population living in a given area produce offspring more than their environment can support, some of the individuals may not survive to maturity. Selection. Individuals in a population having adaptive characteristics survive longer and produce more offspring than others do, thereby passing on their traits generation by generation. Adaptation. The characteristics of the individuals that survived and reproduced become more common in the population. Some of these characteristics give individuals a better chance of survival in their environment.
Do you ever know why dinosaurs no longer exist today? Do you ever wonder why some animals before are very different from the ones we have now? Some organisms may look the same but have distinct differences from each other. Others may not be related to one another, but they have similar functional features and characteristics. You may wonder why some animals that are present before are no longer existing today. That is because such extinction were caused by environmental factors and human activities, such as deforestation, illegal mining, and industrialization. How do we know how old something is? For people, we'd ask to see their birth certificates. For trees, we'd count the rings. But how do we know how old a fossil is? Fossils have their own internal clock. Scientists can read it by looking at the ratio of two different types of carbon atoms. Different fossils from different eras. Trilobite. Trilobite is an invertebrate. It lived in a shallow marine environment during Ordovician and Silurian periods under Paleozoic era. Crinoid stem. Crinoids look like plants but are actually animals related to our modern-day starfish. They belong to phylum Echinodermata and lived during Triassic period under Mesozoic era. Dinosaur bone. Dinosaurs are giant reptiles ruled the Earth during the Jurassic period under Mesozoic era. Vascular plant. This fossilized leaf is once part of an early vascular plant during the Carboniferous period under Paleozoic era. How does radiocarbon dating work? Every living thing is made of carbon. Plants grab carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and use it to form complex organic molecules. Animals get their carbon by eating these plants. The geologic time scale. Out of the examination of layers of rocks and dating fossils, scientists were able to develop the geologic time scale. The geologic time scale shows the major events in the Earth's history. It also shows the appearance of various kinds of organisms in a particular period of time on Earth. High up in the atmosphere, sometimes cosmic rays hit nitrogen atoms. This creates carbon with 6 protons and 8 neutrons, and we call this carbon-14. Carbon-14 has one unique and important attribute. It's unstable. So once an animal dies, the carbon-14 in its body will start to go away.